The ANC's regional conference in Ekurhuleni announced the provisional top 5 leaders. The results are, however, preliminary, and that's because there are 19 votes that have not been counted yet. Now let's get the latest from ANC senior reporter Siphamandla Goke. Siphamandla, I understand you have a guest with you. There was a lot of excitement earlier on and disappointment, I understand.
Indeed, joy and heartbreak for some after the announcement of those preliminary results for the 8th ANC Ekurhuleni Regional Conference. The talking point is about the 19 quarantined votes. What will happen then? Duduzi Manana is ANC NEC member who will talk to us about that. Baba, thank you very much for time. We understand that the national headquarters of the ANC Luthuli House will deal with the matter of the 19 quarantined votes. Where to from here regarding those votes?
Well, obviously, we've elected the officials, the top 5, and there was an objection from plenary on 5 branches, which amounts to 19 delegates, 19 votes that were supposed to participate at conference, and they were excluded. So we decided as the steering committee of conference that we will quarantine those votes. So the delegates have participated in the voting process, but their votes are quarantined. They will be kept on a separate envelope pending a verification process that will be conducted by the national organizing. So tomorrow that process starts. Currently, obviously, Comrade Mzwandile Masina is leading in terms of the votes for the position of chairperson. Comrade Doctor got the second position, but a true determination will be made once the verification process is concluded by national organizing, and if of course it favors one of the 2 candidates, those votes will be swayed to any of the 2.
Who is going to close this conference? Because they are preliminary results. Simply, technically, it means there is no duly elected leadership pending the declaration of the results. Who is going to close the conference?
Well, we have decided that the steering committee must meet and make a determination, because you will appreciate that there are 2 official positions that are not affected by this quarantine. That is the position of regional secretary and the position of regional treasurer, because they got I think 22 votes, and therefore the 19 votes really do not affect them. The position of chairperson, deputy chairperson, and deputy secretary, those 3 positions, or those comrades got below 19 votes. So they are affected by the quarantine. So the steering committee will then have to make that determination. So we'll meet before the conference concludes its business to make that determination.
In hindsight, don't you think it was an error of judgment to declare preliminary results, because it has caused so much confusion, and some are saying it will open a platform and a leeway for litigation? Are you worried that this conference may be challenged in court?
We are not worried at all. We always quarantine votes when there is no determination at that particular point, or when we have to do a particular investigation or verification of one sort or the other. So it doesn't really scare us. If there are people who want to go to court, we will certainly defend ourselves, because the very reason that we quarantined those votes are not counted. They are quarantined pending a particular outcome, and in this case it's a verification outcome. So there's going to be a re-audit of those branches and an outcome will then tell us where those votes must sway to, whether to the first candidate or to the second candidate for each of the 5 positions. So had those affected branches participated fully in those ballots or those votes counted, then it was going to be a different case. We've quarantined them pending a decision. But for purposes of conference, we had to release results of those who legitimately voted. Yes.
Today, this conference was supposed to have been closed at 11 a.m. It's not going to happen. You are delayed with this conference. When is it coming to an end?
Well, of course, the conference has taken much longer than we thought because of the many glitches and administrative things that we had to deal with as the steering committee, but also guided by conference. Partly we had to take political decisions around the 5 branches, which were a bone of contention for this conference, and hence we said, for purposes of progress, let them participate, let's quarantine their votes, let us go and take decisions, let's subject the branches to an audit verification process. But we are hoping that at least by tomorrow we'll close conference. We have progressed significantly well. Yes, we're supposed to finish conference today, but it's a conference of delegates. It's a conference is more a festival of ideas. So, comrades, when we allocate time to a discussion. If they want to stretch that discussion, they stretch it. It is their conference. It is a conference of branches.
But those ideas have not been discussed in terms of policy issues. It's been about the credentials and attendance register, in fact, and just voting. In terms of policy issues, as an NEC member, you should be worried that this conference has not been seized with the most important task of socio-economic challenges facing the people of Ekurhuleni. It's been about fighting over credentials and just voting for the top officials, not even additional REC members. Surely it cannot be a situation that ANC regional conferences and provincial conferences are about electing leadership and fighting over credentials.
It was a highly contested conference. We would have, having commissions discussing policy issues would have been ideal. As the NEC, we are not happy at all that branches sat over 3 days discussing credentials, dealing with registration. Again, you can tell that there's a great deal of mistrust amongst comrades in the region, amongst leaders in the region, and I think part of the work that we have to do as the NEC is to come back to the region and see how we best harmonize relations amongst the comrades and amongst leaders. But it is worrisome. We are concerned as the NEC. We will direct that an RGC be convened as soon as possible so that policy issues are discussed, especially in this important year when we are going to our policy conference and the national conference in December.
One more issue that will concern you also is the issue of women representation in the top officials of the ANC. Only one female leader elected here. I know the criticism will be wait up until the REC is elected. There will be a 50% balance, but surely it cannot be that within the officials of the ANC there is a trend of electing just one female leader to be the deputy regional secretary or something like that.
Well, it has been a trend, but obviously officials are not a structure. Yes. The structure is the REC, and our policy position is that in every structure of the ANC, whether it's a BEC, REC, PEC or NEC, there must be 50-50. That is our policy position. So we trust that as we go forward, we'll have more women chairpersons of regions, more representation in the officials, more women representation in the officials. But as I said, officials are not a structure. The full complement of a structure is the REC, and we do trust that they will comply with our policy of 50-50 and have 50% women representation or even more.
Break it down for us moving forward. What happens with this conference? I understand that now is the presentation of that financial report. What is going to happen in terms of your agenda and program in closing?
So essentially, the regional treasurer, former, because we have now elected officials, he is delayed in terms of presenting his report as the treasurer of the region. He is presenting. The elections agency is going to print the ballot papers for the additional members, and after Comrade Doctor, the outgoing regional treasurer is presented, they will engage his report. If conference believe that they should, and then delegates will go and vote for additional members. We should then rise in the morning. So we are hoping to finish the business of conference tomorrow morning.
Thank you very much for your time, Baba. That is Mduduzi Manana, who's an NEC member of the ANC as well as a member of the steering committee running this Ekurhuleni regional conference of the ANC. It's confirmed this conference will not wrap up today. They are anticipating that by tomorrow they will close the conference. It's been delayed due to the issue of fighting over credentials as well as voting for the officials. The conference has not been seized with other elements which make up for the conference, like policy discussions. It's been mainly about two things: the credentials and voting for the officials of the region of the ANC. So it seems as if that call by the provincial chairperson of the ANC in Gauteng, David Makhura, to say this conference must stick to time frames and deadlines has fallen on deaf ears.
Well, Siphamandla, it seems to be a trend for many of these conferences. If it's not credentials, then they're certainly not finishing on time. Just how many more do we have to go?
It will certainly be before 5.
In Gauteng, unfortunately, you still have 3 more conferences that are outstanding. I'm talking about regional conferences. So this weekend, there were 2 regional conferences, Ekurhuleni as well as Sedibeng. Sedibeng was very smooth, leadership elected and contested. Not to say that if there is contestation is not smooth, but it started on time. They adopted the credentials, elected leadership, had time to discuss policy issues. That is the Sedibeng region of the ANC. Remember that some regional conferences of the ANC in Gauteng have been delayed and postponed, and that is Tshwane as well as Greater Johannesburg region. So out of the 3 that are outstanding, they include Greater Johannesburg region, Tshwane as well as the West Rand. According to the ANC chairperson in Gauteng, David Makhura, the likelihood is that the Greater Johannesburg region will convene its conference next week or 2 weeks time from now, followed by Tshwane, and then the West Rand is anticipated to be the last one. But all of that will see the ANC in Gauteng racing against time to finish these regional conferences, because the ideal situation is to go to the provincial conference with all regions having convened their regional conferences. The Gauteng provincial conference of the ANC is set to take place somewhere towards the end of June and first week of July. If you still have outstanding regional conferences, and there is a likelihood that some of them will be highly contested, further divisions, you will go to the provincial conference with some challenges. If you have had disputes during these regional conferences, unresolved disputes, the likelihood is that the very same branches that will need to participate at the provincial conference will also have issues. So the provincial conference may be affected by allegations and claims of irregularities, the rigging of processes, manipulation of processes leading up to the regional conferences as well as the provincial conference. So it's a difficult one for the ANC in Gauteng, as they still have 3 outstanding regional conferences.
All right, thank you so much for that update. That is our senior reporter, Siphamandle Goge, just giving us an update with regards to what's transpired in Ekurhuleni. Now,